Well, let's jump into Proverbs chapter 6 as we come now really it's a parentheses here in Proverbs. As chapter 5, we saw the dangers of immorality. The end of chapter 6 and chapter 7 are going to return to that same theme. But in the meantime, chapter 6, verses 1 through 19, begins to describe for us three different kinds of folly. So it's almost as if it comes to a point at the end of chapter 5 and saying, this is getting really heavy. Let me take a breather and step back. Let's deal with some other stuff, and then we're going to come back to this issue of immorality. And so we have really three issues here. The pledge, or the security, or we might say today the cosigner, the lazy man, and simply the wicked one. And we're going to look at the first two this afternoon, and there is quite a bit to cover, so I'm going to move fairly quickly. But let me read verse 1 through 5 first here. It says, "My son, if you become surety for your friend, if you have shaken and pledged for a stranger, you are snared by the words of your mouth. You are taken by the words of your mouth. So do this, my son, and deliver yourself. For you have come into the hand of your friend. Go and humble yourself. Plead with your friend. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler." So there's a vivid warning here with this, verse 5, but he starts in verse 1 being a surety or a pledge. Let me give you an Old Testament example of this pledge, of making yourself responsible for another. That's what we're talking about. The pledge, the surety, the cosigner saying, I am going to be responsible for this person's debt, or in some cases, actions. So when Judah was trying to convince Jacob to send him and his 9 brothers back to Egypt to go get food for their families. Now, I know I'm picking maybe a less familiar portion of that story, but does anybody remember when Judah and Jacob were discussing this, Judah said, if I don't come back, what was the rest of that kind of promise or pledge that Judah made? Do you remember? It's when he tells Jacob, here are my 2 sons. And leaving them behind as a pledge, so that if Judah doesn't come back, essentially you can take out whatever punishment you want on my children. Now, in doing this, he is saying he's placing the fate of his children in the hands of the Egyptian rulers. He doesn't realize this is Joseph. All he knows is there was a lot of problems the first time they went down there. Dad does not want them to go back. Simeon's still sitting in jail down there. And now he's saying, you keep my sons. I'll make them a pledge, basically, that Benjamin's coming back. And that's another variant of what's happening here. And so that pledging yourself on behalf of another really is a mark of folly. I decided to look online for some information there about co-signing. And one website said when you co-sign for a loan, you are equally responsible for paying it off and committing to repay the loan if the primary borrower defaults. So when you co-sign a loan, you're placing your financial fate in the hands of somebody else. And this same website also said, although you are responsible for the debt, you will have no ownership stake in the asset, if there is one. So if you co-sign for a house, your name's not on the deed. Your name's on the debt, but not the deed. And this is what Solomon is, part of what Solomon is saying this is foolish. You are snared. You are taken. You have been captured. Just like in a trap, and you have come under the control of another. Verse 3, you have come into the hand of your friend. What he's saying is your fate now rests in your friend's control. Is that really a wise position to be in? He said, well, I trust him. I know him. I know this often happens with parents. They co-sign for the children. And they say, well, that's my kid. I know they're going to be responsible. They're going to pay it off and all of that. But they're still your financial future is completely out of your control. And so he says then, verses 3, 4, and 5, quick, short, rapid instructions. First, go and humble yourself. Go to him. Lower yourself to this person. And the person they're going to is to the friend. So you're not going to the creditor, but you're going to the person that you co-signed for. And so you're going to him and humbling himself, and you're pleading with him. You're badgering him and importuning him and just pestering him until he does something. He says, go immediately. Don't go take a nap. Don't go to bed. Don't give any slumber or sleep. Do not rest until you've done this. Take urgent, quick, immediate action. Go immediately. Go quickly. Go urgently. Verse 5. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from a hunter. We don't have gazelles, we have whitetail. You walk through the woods, and what does that deer do? Even if you don't have a gun, he doesn't care. What does he do? Or she does, more than likely. Yeah, she bolts. She's gone. And I see we have a little trail around the back of our property here, and I walk it pretty regular, and I see deer back there pretty regular. But inevitably, they hear me coming, and I might catch a glimpse of them off on the side, but they are gone. And they're not just 50 feet away and stop and look at me again. They're gone. They're on somebody else's property, and they're still heading south. They're not stopping. That's the idea. This incredible haste and urgency. There's one thing on their mind. Or like a bird from the hand of a fowler. Same basic idea. The one out hunting birds, trying to snare them. And the bird flying away quickly before he can get it. It's all the same picture. He says, deliver. Verse 5, deliver yourself. Now here's where we have to stop and really think through this. You have co-signed on a loan. And now you're going to your friend and you're pleading with them. You've humbled yourself before them. You're urgent, you're earnest in this, and you are seeking to deliver yourself. How? In what way can you be delivered from this pledge? If they pay it. Because typically, at least my understanding is, it's not real easy to get your name off as a cosigner. They have to go through and get a whole new loan in the first place. And so what they need to do, the way for you to be delivered, is for them to pay off the debt so that they no longer owe anything. So there's an aspect here where you're going to drive your friend to pay off this debt, to get it completely taken care of. Do all that you know how to do. You might have to make a nuisance of yourself, but to get that obligation met. And it's harder today. I recognize that today we have long-term loans, and so you might be on somebody's home mortgage for 30 years. And they do have a $300,000 mortgage, and you're on it. It's not something that you can just say, hey, go write them a quick check and pay this off. There's some real difficulties in being delivered from some of this, which is part of the warning here, is don't do it. Don't get in that situation. You won't have to worry about it on the other side. But there should be this earnest badgering them. And it may be something as simple as go get a job. You need to stop lazing around the house. You go work, and bothering them and reminding them, look, I'm on the hook for this. And I think that's, I'm going to read really between the lines a lot here, but I think that's certainly be part of my argument, is I'm on the hook. If you don't pay up, I've got to. I'm not buying you a house. I'm not buying your car. You go pay for it. You go get a job, get a second job if you need to. Pay this down. I want to see that you're intent on getting out from under this debt. And so he's saying, go and rescue yourself. One author Raymond Ortland said, if you put your financial future in the hands of someone the banks already think is a bad risk, you are acting irresponsibly yourself and encouraging irresponsibility in the other person. There's a lot to be said for that. Somebody, especially, I'm going to draw a little bit of a line because, you get a young 20-something, maybe newlyweds, who are trying to buy a house, and they don't have any credit. And that's a different scenario than, say, a 40-year-old who's trying to buy a house and has bad credit. So let me talk about the second scenario. I'm going to leave the first scenario for you to figure out on your own. So I'm just going to punt on that one. So let me talk about the second scenario. Yeah, I am. In that situation, somebody that has bad credit, they've shown themselves not to be trustworthy. Why would you say, yeah, I'll help you get a loan? I'll help you get back on your feet. What proof or assurance is there that they're actually going to stay with their job, keep up on their payments, stop the foolish spending habits that they did have? What assurance do you have that they're actually going to be responsible? What happens more times than not is that you encourage them to continue as they're acting, because you're there as the fallback. And I know I've seen family situations where a child acts irresponsibly and the parents just bail them out. And what they do is encourage the child to continue to be irresponsible. They save him and protect him or her from the consequences. Never feels the weight of their bad decisions because there's the buffer back there. And part of what wisdom says is don't get in this situation. Don't pledge your future on somebody else's behavior. That's what he's saying. Do not guarantee somebody else's behavior. Promise to pay someone else's debt. That's what a cosigner in the end is doing, is saying, I will pay this debt. If they don't do it, I will. You can't do that. You can't guarantee somebody else's behavior. You can't, honestly, you can't say, I know he will go and do this. So even as we talk about, let's talk about work, hiring out a handyman, a construction worker. It's always a bit of an iffy thing up here. But hiring, somebody asks you, say, hey, do you know anybody that does this? And you might say, yeah, I've had good luck with this guy. You call him up. He's done well for me. I would be real careful about saying, yeah, I call this guy up. He will do right by you. He will give you a break. He'll give you a discount because I'm his friend. He will do the best job you've ever seen. Now, he might be that kind of guy, and he might do all of that. But you don't know. And don't make a guarantee on what he's going to do. If he's going to make guarantees, let him make them. You give a good recommendation if a good recommendation is justifiable. But don't cross that line and start speaking of what somebody else will do and placing ultimately your reputation or your testimony on the line for what they're going to do. Do not make promises based upon a future you have no control over. And this is pulling this back. We all recognize that we have no ultimate control over the future. As we're seeing just in a second talking about laziness, we have at the same time a responsibility for our actions. We are told to act wisely, to work, to be diligent. We have, in a sense, some control over our future. So I don't know whether or not my house is going to burn down tomorrow. But I have control over what kind of savings I'm putting away in case of some sort of emergency. I don't know if I'm going to need to file that insurance claim, but I have some control over whether or not I have insurance and what kind of insurance there is. And so this is that stepping back to now I have no control over who's going to pay something. I can bother him. I can send him a text every single day. I can call. I can harass. I can be standing at the door, knocking at the door, 7 a.m. every morning. Are you going to work? But I still can't make them do anything. And so don't make promises based on something that you have absolutely no control over. Do not place your financial future in the hands of another. I've said that several times already. Another way of saying this too is do not agree to things you have no control over. Another aspect of this is do not accept obligations you cannot afford to pay. So in the whole co-signer thing, I would counsel somebody. They're saying, even if this is my child, I know they're responsible, trustworthy, but they don't have any credit score yet, so I'm going to help them get started with this house. One thing I would be looking at is saying, can you afford their house payment? You say, well, they're not going to default. That's beside the point. What if something happens? Can you afford their house payment? And in that situation, so I'm not going to completely ignore the first scenario I drew there. In that situation, I would be saying, if you cannot pay, in case they can't make their payments, if you can't afford them, you can't be the co-signer. If this is beyond your means, don't sign. Because you're accepting an obligation that you may have to pay, and you have to, if you're going to wisely plan, you're going to be ready for that. So don't accept as obligations you can't afford to pay. Know what you're agreeing to before you make the agreement. Yeah, I think that's some basic wisdom there, just simply knowing that, yeah, I know what I'm getting into. I know what they're going to do. I know what's required of me. I know what is asked, what may happen to me, what the consequences may be. And then do not make open-ended agreements. Again, we're dealing, especially in these kinds of securities, guarantees kind of situations, and we're very careful. I'm not going to certainly agree to, I'll just pay whatever, here's my credit card, go have fun with it. No. It may be, okay, here's the credit card, go buy this. But if you expend more than that, I'm not paying for it, you're paying for it. I mean, we do that as a church. We already have this policy in place. We have our budgets. We already have in place, if something is spent over budget, the church has the authority and the right to say, we're not paying that. Whoever spent that is paying it. And so that even in a budgeted category where we know there's something that we're doing, if someone spends beyond our agreed upon, we're not necessarily, and we're certainly not obligated to pay that. That's part of how this works, and thinking through our financial arrangements, and I'm committing myself, but only so far. I'm making legitimate commitments, but I'm not making open-ended commitments. And then the final one is simply do not take unnecessary risks. As we think about particularly managing money here, there are risks that are inevitable, but we can avoid unnecessary ones. And co-signing for somebody else, Solomon considers an unnecessary risk. So then we go to verse 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. So we have an ant. We see them this time of year where they're running all over the place. I constantly squishing them in my kitchen, and they're everywhere right now. And he says, learn from the ant. There are some lessons here in the ant. And Proverbs is going to do this again. Proverbs chapter 26. He's going to point us not only to the ant, but he's going to point us to the spiders, and he's going to point us to the locust, and he's going to point us to the rock hyrax. And it says each of these has wisdom in these various ways. And here he's saying, you who are lazy, you need to go look at the ant. We even have Aesop turn this into a fable. The ant and the grasshopper. You remember that fable that all the grasshoppers spent all of his summer partying and playing the guitar and goofing around and doing whatever he wanted to do while the ant was busy working. laying up all of his stores and everything, and then winter began to come along, and the grasshopper came to the ant and said, it's cold outside, I need something. Give me some place, give me something warm, give me some food. And the ant basically tells him, you should have been working. You were goofing around all summer long when it was time to work. Why do you expect me to give you something because I did what I was supposed to and you didn't? Solomon has a very, very similar teaching here. Learn from the ant. The ant is a self-motivated worker, has no captain, overseer, or ruler. We know this. The queen in an ant colony, she's not down there issuing orders. There's no kind of ant hierarchy where this ant supervisor is telling these ant managers to send their employees out to do all of that. They just go. They are self-motivated. There's a wisdom there. She provides her supplies in summer, gathers her food in the harvest. I don't see ants in January. They're very rightly asleep, or I don't think they survive the winter. I don't even know. Is there an entomologist in the house? No? Okay. So we'll assume they sleep, they hibernate in the winter, just for the sake of it. They're not out trying to hunt down food when there's nothing on the ground but ice and snow. They work when it's time to work. That's the point that Solomon is making. They're out in the summer when it's the right time to work. He's a foresighted worker, or diligent worker, excuse me. It's just, again, we can see this is watching them, scurrying everywhere, all over the place, working diligently all the time, carrying home huge loads of food every time they're out. It is a foresighted worker. Gathering, and again, in the summer and in the harvest, recognizing it. And we understand the ant doesn't think in the sense that we would, but there is a foresight, and we recognize there's a foresight God has built into the ant to prepare now for the days that are coming. And there's also, it's a frugality to the ant. He's a frugal worker because she gathers her food, provides her supplies. This is not just out eating and every day being out diligent about stuffing its belly today, but rather it is diligent about bringing in and saving, keeping that part aside that is needed. The ant will work, though nobody requires her. Some men will not work, no matter who requires it. That's the difference, and that's the distinction that Solomon is drawing here. And so we have the sloth, the sluggard, the lazy man is told to wake up. How long? How long will you slumber? When will you rise from your sleep? The sluggard, on the other hand, is one who only works under duress. If you've worked in really any kind of setting at all with anybody, you probably have met somebody who only works when there's somebody else there watching, making sure he's working. You probably have all seen those who their skill at the job is hiding. They can disappear for hours at a time. And they do not work unless it's absolutely required of them. And the sluggard is that kind of worker. It's only when he has no choice. The sluggard is also one who sleeps when he should be working. That's why he's asking the question, how long? When will you rise from your slumber? It's morning. The cows need to be milked. What are you doing? How much longer are you going to sleep? It is dry, warm weather. It is time to bring in the hay. Why are you taking a nap? This sluggard is foolish in that he sleeps when he should not be. And this is, just as an aside, this is certainly not a condemnation of sleep. We know that Psalm says God gives his beloved sleep. Ecclesiastes tells us that sleep to a laboring man is sweet. There is an appropriate rest. The problem with the sluggard is not that he's sleeping, it's sleeping and when he should be working. The sluggard is also one who minimizes his sleep. I think in verse 10, he's quoting some of what the sluggard says. A little sleep. A little slumber. Let me just hit the snooze one more time. It's just, and yet, again, if you've met anybody like this, you know, and I remember a roommate I had in college, actually, he every morning would wake up, I don't feel well. And he'd roll over, and the alarm would go off. 30 minutes later, he's still asleep. And all these reasons why it's okay for him to sleep. He's justifying, excusing, and minimizing that this sloth here is minimizing that he's actually lazy. The sluggard, contrary to the ant, does not plan ahead. Verse 11, your poverty come on you like a prowler. Your need like an armed man. We know, I mean, the idea of a mugger here, you know, this is generally somebody that leaps out and catches you unexpected. It's not, again, somebody sent you a letter, so I'm coming to say, it's completely unexpected. The sluggard has not looked ahead to recognize the consequences of his actions. He has not looked ahead to realize that if I skip work again today, I'm going to lose my job. And if I lose my job, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent or buy my groceries. And if I can't pay my rent, I'm not going to have anywhere to live. And if I can't buy my groceries, I'm not going to have anything to eat. That whole very logical, reasonable process escapes him. He doesn't plan ahead. He doesn't think. And so suddenly, the creditors are there. The landlord is there saying, you owe me 2 months' rent. And the sluggard is saying, well, I don't know what happened. With a little bit of thought, he could have planned ahead and foreseen and avoided. He does not prepare. Again, this flip side of that, what I've just said, there is no, again, contrary to the ant, working at the right time, in season. The sluggard does not. He's working, he's sleeping. There is no preparation. There's no saving. There's no planning. There's no working for a long-term goal. And also, he has no protection. So that when setbacks come, he is not ready. Part of what Proverbs says, and this part begins to point towards it, and we see it elsewhere, is that the improper preparation, bad choices, foolish choices, make any setback a catastrophe. If you're not planned ahead and prepared, then when this thing comes, now I'm caught out. I don't have anything. The one, for example, who is diligent and is saving up, and maybe you have that savings account that you set aside, I'm going to put some into this, is that rainy day fund. And you build up, and I know it's times, Ruth and I have seen it in our own lives, there are times where you save up, and about time you get a certain amount saved up, and you think, okay, we're doing okay. The well goes out. The car breaks down. Something else requires a huge expense. But because there's been diligence, even though it's not fun, it's not a catastrophe. There's not a scrambling to say, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't afford any of this. There's the sluggard, he hasn't saved up. He has nothing in readiness. He hasn't harvested at all. And now that it's snowing, he has nothing to fall back on. He has no protection at all. And the sluggard is one who folds his hands. Bruce Waltke says he's one that folds his arms. He grabs his blankets, he curls back up in it, he rolls over, and he neglects everything. Even his own well-being. And he goes to sleep completely content, even though he is sleeping to his destruction, to his sorrow. Derek Kidner said he deceives himself by the smallness of his surrender. How long is the snooze on your alarm clock? I can tell you mine's 9 minutes, exactly. Some are 5 minutes. I saw Steve said 8 minutes there. Oh, 9 minutes. So 9 minutes as well. And yeah, we think that's just a few minutes. So you hit the snooze. And it goes off. It's just a few minutes. I hit the snooze. It's not I'm going to, or at least rarely, is I'm going back to sleep for the rest of the day. It's just a little bit, inches and minutes, his opportunity slips away. Charles McLean says, sleepy sluggards become destiny's derelicts. It's a very good way of saying it. Those who are lazy find themselves out of work, out of, we might say, financial security, out of stability, out of the element of the peace of mind that comes when we have been diligent. He's out. He's derelict. Now, I will say, just before we go any farther, we recognize that not all poverty is a result of laziness. There are absolutely times where those who have been diligent, doing what they're supposed to, for one reason or another, are doing without. I think of pastoral ministry. It's the first example comes to my mind because it's very personal. I know our first ministry Ruth and I were in, I got nothing. I don't remember how much it was, but really as far as it went, the salary was nothing. And I worked a full-time job at the same time. I would say most of our married life, the United States government has considered us under the poverty line. And I don't think I'm lazy. I know Ruth's not lazy. And yet there is, at times, doing out with the nicer things. We never went without the necessary things. And so not all poverty, whether it be actual poverty or poverty as defined by America, not all of that is a result of laziness, but laziness generally results either in poverty or dependence on others to sustain everything. And we live, of course, in a culture where there's so many safety nets so that one can avoid work. And I say that word avoid, can avoid working and still receive income, still have bills paid, still have a place to live. There are those who avoid work, who maybe for one reason or another can't receive government benefits, and yet they find friends or family who take care of them, who they bounce from this house and then to this house and then to this house. And so they're dependent always on someone else, which I would consider that a poverty. But they're always, laziness, it never produces riches. It always leads to dependence and poverty. And so, what do? We work. Work diligently. We need to look at sloth as a sin, not as an infirmity. We need to recognize that laziness is actually wicked. We also need to do the right work at the right time. So when would you cut the firewood for the 2025 winter? Yeah, last year. Last year was really the good time. Maybe right now, I think it's getting late, but maybe right now, you do the right work. You don't wait till November to start cutting your firewood for this winter. That's the wrong time. So laziness is not always just a lack of work. Sometimes this slothfulness is doing the wrong work or doing the right work at the wrong time. Maybe you've been in a situation where you got something you know you need to do in your house. Every once in a while I'll do this. I'll sit down and start typing, trying to work on a sermon, and I'm just not feeling it. And so what I do, I think I need to touch up the weeding a little bit. I think it's time to go plow the driveway. That vacuuming doesn't look really good in the church lobby. I need to go take care of that. I need to organize this. I never organize a pen drawer, but there certainly are times where I would rather do that than what I'm supposed to be doing. So laziness is not always, and I would say there is a mark of laziness in that. It's not always I'm not doing anything. Sometimes I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's a discipline in working, when doing the work you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and not letting other things distract. And let me throw in one other thing here. As we're ministering to people, And so we interact with people. We have many that come through here looking for help. One of the questions that we should be asking, one of the things that we should, as we look to provide them sustaining help that they will get them going in the right direction, is do they work, but do they do the right work at the right time? I know some here, I'm not going to call any names or anything, but I know some here know individuals that they're very busy about things to no value, at least I would consider to no value. Very busy about rearranging stuff, but not preparing. And part of the looking to help them is not just saying you need to get to work. That often is the case. It is, let me help you do the right work when you need to do it. Let me help you prepare for this winter. You know the heating bills are going to go up. So let me help you save. That's a valid application of what we're talking about here, is the right work. It's not just the physical manual labor, it's the preparatory work. You have to store up your supplies. You know your expenses are going to increase, and maybe because of the work they do, their income's going to decrease. So let's get an annual savings plan going so you have that buffer to carry you through the winter. And there are other applications of that. I think you can expand on that. One other thing, the ant teaches us, don't spend everything you earn. Don't consume it all. Make wise choices so that you have some left over to set aside, to save up. Do not waste your work doing things of no value. I've already touched on that one. Keep your commitments. The sluggard promises. And we certainly see this. He may not be in the Proverbs 6 sluggard, but we've seen this in sluggards. Promise, but never perform. They never come through. He oversleeps. He says, I'm sorry, my alarm didn't go off. He procrastinates, delays. There's always something coming up. The sluggard is one who cannot be trusted to do what he said he would do. He always has a reason. It's a good reason. It's always a good reason. But there's a habit. You can't trust him. So keep your commitments. Wisdom just does what it says. So let me wrap this all up, tying all these things together. What do? Don't make hasty decisions. Think about the consequences of your actions, the ramifications of your decisions. Think about the risk that you're taking on. Don't make hasty decisions. I would add to this, don't make the emotionally driven decisions. You go back to the co-signing. Family member calls you up and says, I got to have this. And there's the whole sob story. There's, of course, it's your family member. You love them. You want to see them well cared for. You don't want to see them suffer. Everything in you says, emotionally, I should do this. But you can't make the emotional decision. You have to make the wise decision. I'm not saying you ignore those factors that are stirring your emotions, but the emotions should not be the driving factor. They should not be what decides for you. And so with that as well, the other side of that too is do not commit yourself too quickly. So don't make promises until you've thought through them. Don't guarantee anything until you looked and said, okay, I can do that. Laziness is a sin. I've already said that. Prepare wisely for the future. We have protect yourself from foolish risks. So again, you're analyzing the risk. There's a risk, if you will, there's a risk-reward analysis going on. You're looking at it to say, is this wise? Honestly evaluate your own skill, ability, and resources. So think about making wise decisions. Think about preparing well for the future. So you may want to live in a cabin in the woods, grow your own food, and hand carve your own furniture. But if you don't know the difference between a chicken and a chipmunk, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And there's an honesty that comes in that says, yeah, that would be really cool. I don't have the resources, whether it be the financial resources or the personal resources, of honestly evaluating what you have before you put yourself under an obligation. You put yourself at risk or in some sort of commitment. And then the last thing is observation of the orderliness of God's creation can guide us in wise living. There's a thing I've seen running around the internet complaining about this ant thing. Go to the ants, you sluggard. And they say, we're not insects. We're not a hive insects. We are omnivorous mammals. We're supposed to hunt and then lie in the shade and sleep for all afternoon. And they're I'm sure there's somewhat an aspect of being funny there. But they're saying that doesn't apply to us. And what Solomon says is you learn wisdom from God's creation. You look at how it works. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things ants do that are not wise for us to do. There are a lot of things that hyraxes do that are not wise for us to do. But there is wisdom that we can learn as we look at the deer or the birds or the fish or whatever it may be. We can learn and see God has created this world to work a certain way. And we see that when His creation complies with that order, it is blessed.